Hello and welcome along to the Weather Studio Live. I'm Alex Deakin.
I'm Aidan McGivern, broadcasting live from the Met Office HQ. We're live every week, Tuesday 1 p.m. Thank you for joining us. This week, of course, we'll be touching on the devastating flooding from the weekend, the rare Met Office red warning for rainfall, the scenes in South Wales in particular, and the ongoing flood risk now across various parts of the country, different river responses currently that we're seeing. And is there more rain to come?
Yeah, we're looking in detail at the forecast for the rest of this week. Overall, it's not quite as extreme as last week, but there is more rain in the forecast. And of course, any more rain is not good news, particularly in those flooding areas. We have a special guest on the show, fingers crossed, not live, but joining us later. I interviewed Penny Endersby. She's going to be talking about a potential new supercomputer that we'll be getting here at the Met Office. So that'll be a little bit later on. But do send in your questions. We really want to hear your questions about anything to do with the world of weather. We'll try and answer some during the programme, but we'll also be answering some straight after as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that.
Good one that's just come in. I'm not sure if this is tongue-in-cheek. Philip Bryan, YouTube. Why don't we get snow from the South Pole? Always the North Pole. Well, Philip, if you look at a map of the world, I think you'll notice that there are some hot bits in the middle. And that probably melts the snow on its way from Antarctica to the UK. It would have to come a long way. Yeah, it would have to. Yeah. I guess you never say never.
Never.
But we're yet to see it happen.
It's a changing climate after all. Yes. Well, we can go to the southern hemisphere though.
Yeah, that's right. Southern hemisphere. That's
Show our first picture. See what I've done now. I've linked. I've done a link there.
It was lost on me.
It was lost on me a little bit. But this taken in Uruguay. Beautiful image of quite a scary thing, shelf cloud. This was taken yesterday in Uruguay. Huge storm system, shelf cloud there, just on the very edge, the leading edge of a cumulonimbus. An absolutely cracking example of one, immediately followed by torrential rain, lightning and hail, no doubt. Absolutely gorgeous images there.
Yeah, incredible. But closer to home, of course, some devastating imagery and footage that came out of different parts of the UK at the weekend. Most notably, of course, around the Brecon Beacons, areas surrounding Pontypridd. This was tweeted to the Met Office on Sunday, shortly after the Met Office issued a rare red warning for rainfall, and we saw the River Taff burst its banks in Pontypridd and devastating flooding there. I mean, this is the high street in Pontypridd. You can see the cars submerged.
We've seen similar images over the last few days, of course, from Herefordshire, Worcestershire and Shropshire as well, all from the flooding caused by Storm Dennis on the back of Storm Ciara the previous weekend. Rare red warning indeed, as Aidan mentioned there. The last red warning issued across the UK was in 2018, the beast from the east, when Storm Emma arrived. It did have two red warnings during that winter for snow. The last rainfall red warning was back in 2015, December 2015, so over 4 years since we last had a red rainfall warning. They are pretty rare.
Yeah. And not surprising, really, given the amount of rain that fell at the weekend. Now, what you can see here on the left is the rainfall amount described as a percentage of the February average up to the 12th of February, so before last weekend. You can see already some parts of northern England, southern Scotland already at their monthly average at that point. The blue colours there. Elsewhere, close to their monthly average for February, already by the 12th of February.
The first couple of weeks of February, as we know, were pretty wet. But then compare that with that. That is the change over the weekend. These are the stats up to the 12th. These are the stats including the 16th. So you can just see how much more rain fell through the weekend, and now many places are at their monthly, pretty much all places are at their monthly average, with the exception of parts of East Anglia and Aberdeenshire, and very many places are at 150 to 200% of their monthly average rainfall, and of course there is still 10 days to go.
Another way of showing the weekend rainfall here is this is the total rainfall amount this weekend, Saturday and Sunday rainfall amount. Well over 100 millimetres across the higher ground, Dartmoor, higher parts of Wales, northwest England, western Scotland. It was western parts of the UK, Western Hills, where we just saw the rainfall become heavy and persistent throughout Saturday and the first half of Sunday.
Some places recording over 160 mils, didn't they? Over the course of
Brecon
the
Beacons were, and around Pontypridd.
Darker purples here, anything over 125 millimetres of rainfall. And then what's that? That's the rainfall over the weekend compared to the monthly average.
Yeah. So although it looks dry, this is comparing 2 days' rainfall, Saturday and Sunday, with all of February's average rainfall. So the white areas here are quite large white areas across parts of South Wales into the Midlands, central, southern parts of England. They had their February average rainfall on Saturday and Sunday.
Just those 2 days.
Just those 2 days.
Remarkable.
So an astonishing amount of rainfall.
Which has, of course, led to the flooding.
Yeah, led to the flooding. And there is more rainfall to come. The weather's remaining unsettled. More rainfall to come. As you mentioned, not on the scale of last weekend, but the weather is in an unsettled mood.
Really remarkable, actually, the way that we had 2 storms, one after another, and they were very similar in many ways. They're both deep areas of low pressure that developed and intensified out in the Atlantic, but they also had significant differences. Kira, the weekend before, was really just pushed along and generated by that jet stream, and it moved through. It was much more of a wind feature, although it did drop a lot of heavy rain as well. With Dennis, it tracked a little bit further north, and it allowed that warmer air to come up. And we had what's called a warm conveyor belt, a ribbon of moisture with it, and that's why we saw much more rainfall, much more widespread heavy rainfall with it, and that's why the floods have been that much worse. Plus, of course, it followed on from Kira, so just topped up the levels.
Yeah, and we're seeing similar weather patterns during the next. We'll just get back to the.
Yeah, the weather patterns remain charged. The jet stream remains lively. At the moment, we're not expecting anything as extreme, but it is a watching brief. And of course, there will be more rainfall. And as I said at the start, any extra rainfall falling in the flooded areas is not good news.
At the moment, we're back to bright spells and showers.
Some speckly nature.
Really lively showers. Yeah. These big angry clouds out in the Atlantic heading our way. And really for the rest of today and into this evening, we're going to see more of that sort of thing. I'll just get that back on. So, showers basically for the rest of today. Some snow over the higher ground of Scotland and northern England. And some particularly lively showers heading in on quite a squally feature, so a sudden increase in winds expected, some hail, some thunder as that moves through southeast England during the evening.
During the evening rush hour as well, so the M25 will be pretty lively through this evening. Again, just when you get a sudden burst of rain and a sudden gust of wind, a squally feature across East Anglia as well.
And once that's through, actually, sky's clear tonight. It's going to be clear and chilly for a time, touch of frost forming, but the weather remains very changeable, so already by the start of Wednesday, the next area of rain is moving in. That's associated with low pressure out in the out towards Iceland. That's going to move to the north of the UK, but bringing another spell of wet weather. And again, as that crosses the country, there'll be dribs and drabs of rain for eastern Scotland, eastern England. But again, it's going to be heaviest and most persistent across parts of western Scotland, northwest England and Wales, especially over the higher ground.
We call this a warm sector behind the warm front, ahead of the cold front in there. So there's slightly milder air tucked into that. So the last couple of days have seen distinctly chilly conditions with that brisk wind making it feel quite fresh. It'll feel very different tomorrow as that warm, moist air tucked into this warm sector arrives with a brisk winds. But it'll be, again, the hills of Wales that really bear the brunt of that rain. You can see the brighter colours there, and then later on across parts of Cumbria.
Yeah, and as that rainfall starts to mount up, you can see some yellow warnings appearing there. Northwest England, parts of North Wales as well as South Wales there for Wednesday night and into Thursday as well. Now, we're not talking about rainfall on the scale of the weekend, but still some significant rainfall. The heaviest rainfall, the highest rainfall amounts most likely to be Northwest England, where more than 50 mils in places, and over North Wales as well, some significant accumulations of rain. South Wales, nowhere near as much as we saw at the weekend, but any additional rainfall...
So sensitive.
They're very sensitive, so not...
This is just a normal weather system, any other winter, really. This would just be another weather system. We probably wouldn't even have yellow warnings out, but because it has been so wet and because of the recent devastating floodings, that's why we have that yellow weather warning for us, because there is likely to be further impacts because it has been so wet. This is the complication, isn't it? This is the complication through Wednesday night into Thursday morning, there's a wave on this weather front. And when we get these little waving weather fronts, they tend to pep the rain up. They also give us a little bit of a headache. They're quite hard for the supercomputer to resolve all the time. So there's always a question mark when you have a waving weather front. But it is like to pep the rain up. But whether that's just a bit further north or a bit further south, that's the biggest headache for forecasters at the moment.
Yeah. But most likely North Wales, North West England. There's just a chance there of some heavier rainfall for southern parts of Scotland at the start of Thursday. Eventually, thankfully, by lunchtime Thursday, it's all moving through. You can start to see a narrow line of brighter colours there. This is something we call line convection on the cold front, and essentially that's just an area of very heavy rainfall as it clears through.
Similarities to this afternoon. It's be like a squally feature, a band of rain. It won't last that long, but it'll be very intense, and again accompanied by really gusty winds. The wind's just whipping up. Likely to be some hail mixed in with that also.
And a sharp temperature drop behind that cold front. Colder air returns, and then we're back to bright spells, blustery showers for northern parts of the country. Could be some snow down to lower levels in these showers across northern western Scotland. Snow over the hills of Northern Ireland, northern England as well. But again, it doesn't last long because the next conveyor of wet and windy weather is on its way for later Thursday and into the start of Friday.
Another low heading to Iceland. I don't know how many low pressure systems have hit Iceland in the past 2 weeks, but there are a lot of them, and we're getting again those weather fronts. This one again for Friday looks like being more of a northern feature, so across the south actually there's a little sort of area of high pressure there, isn't there, which is trying to keep things a bit drier across the south on Friday, but further north more rain, and again it doesn't look like anything huge in terms of totals through Friday, but it's that extra rain falling, so we then have a yellow warning in force for parts of northern England for that rain falling on Friday and into Saturday. That could also cause some flooding, again because it's falling into catchments that are very sensitive, that have seen an awful lot of rain through February, if and indeed throughout the winter.
Yeah. So a lot to stay across over the next few days, of course.
Winds are going to be pretty lively with that as well. It's quite closely packed isobar, so that tells us it's going to be windy anyway. But in particular, to the lee of high ground, could get some very strong lee gusts on Friday and into Saturday, because the air is quite stable, and that's when you're most likely to get that bouncing effect over the mountains. So yes, it'll be very windy on western coasts, like all these systems have been, but interestingly, on Friday, we could also get some strong winds across parts of the east. There's more information on lee gusts on Learn About Weather.
The YouTube channel, Learn About Weather. Just Google that, Met Office, Learn About Weather YouTube channel.
Squally winds on the squall line
on there? There's something to do with squalls on there. Line convection, of course. All the big words that we've just mentioned. Beginner's guide are on there if you want to know what on earth we're talking about.
Don't go on there just yet though, because we're still mid-flow and we're just checking your questions. Thank you for sending them in. Plenty coming in as usual.
Advice for people driving, that comes from Leanne Barker on Facebook. Basic advice is to keep across Met Office weather forecasts and weather warnings. When there are warnings issued, then you can head to the Met Office website and you can find full details on timings of that warning, locations, but also advice on how driving conditions will be. And we'll often post advice, little GIFs on our Twitter channel.
Jonathan Van Dyke on YouTube. Hello, friends. Why do we name the storms that we get? And are we expecting any more named storms before the winter ends? Well, we can keep naming storms right the way through the summer. There was one in June a couple of years ago, wasn't there? So yes, there's every potential for seeing further. We haven't got any lined up at the moment, but we're obviously watching developments as low pressures continue to spin towards us. The reason we name them is to raise awareness. That is the main reason for naming storms. We name them and they get much more exposure. People are more aware, people are able to prepare for them in advance, and these past two in particular we're giving lots of notice because we named them. Kira on the Wednesday before it hit really on the Sunday, and Dennis we named last Tuesday ahead of it really arriving on Saturday. So naming them just gives them a bit more impetus. We're able to then get the word out, so it helps to keep people safe, and emergency responders find that very useful as well. Of course, it gets more coverage through the media. There's, again, more about how we name our storms if you visit our Met Office website. Sean on Twitter, on the maps, I noticed a jet stream running west to east over North Africa. Does this separate tropical there? And I'm not sure when you were looking at, Sean, but our jet stream the jet stream does drive that far south into North Africa at times. It tends to migrate up and north. But there's many different jet streams around the world, actually.
In the winter, you can get two jet streams. You can get the one that mainly affects us. That's the polar jet stream, but you can get something called the subtropical jet stream, which can develop as well. So you can get two jet streams in the northern hemisphere because of the big temperature differences at this time of the year. So that might be the one that you saw across North Africa.
Weather Michael on YouTube, are we close to having one of the wettest winters on record? And Orville Blake on YouTube, is the flooding global warming in the UK? Well, Michael, the stats aren't in yet for the rest of winter, but as we've already seen, it's going to be pretty high up there for February. At the moment, I'm not aware of where we sit. We need to speak to Dr. Mark McCarthy, I guess, for the overall winter stats. We'll be having those in the next couple of weeks. It has been a particularly wet February, following on from a fairly wet January as well. Is the flooding global warming in the UK? Well, of course, Orville, you can't just put one event down to global warming, but we are expecting with climate change, our climate is changing, and of course a warmer climate can hold more moisture, so we are expecting more extreme events. We are expecting the flooding, when we see it, to be worse than it was before because of climate change. So you can't just specifically say that what we've seen in the past week is definitely to do with climate change, but it is consistent with the kind of things that we are expecting. There'll probably be something called an attribution study done in the weeks and months ahead, which will say how much more likely the severe weather that we've seen is because of human-influenced climate change. Good question.
Gordy B on YouTube. There were reports of another two storms named. Can't find anything on the Met Office app. There haven't been any more storms named at the time of recording, so that's why they aren't on the Met Office app. As soon as they are named, if they are named, then of course you will find all the information.
Reliable source. You want to looking at the Met Office. We're the ones who name it, along with Met Aaron. So yeah, if we haven't named it, it hasn't been named. Basically,
if we don't name it, it doesn't happen.
Well, let's Met Aaron name it.
Yeah, that's true.
Or of course our Netherlands partners as well. Sorry, yeah, shouldn't forget them. They've been added to the storm naming system this year as well. So the Dutch could also name a storm.
Right, let's move on because of course there was some devastating flooding at the weekend, and there continues to be ongoing flooding issues across different parts of the country because of different river response rates. And we've got some images here that show the situation with the River Ouse in York.
Yeah, this is quite interesting because this is taken on Saturday, 11 o'clock on Saturday, when I think it was rainy. You can pretty much tell from the clouds over there that it was rain. This is when the heaviest rain was really coming down across parts of Yorkshire. Obviously, it's flooded, a city that's used to flooding, of course. But actually, it's interesting to see how the flood waters actually rose after the rain had kind of stopped. So we've got Sunday's picture here. You can see the levels. It's quite useful. There's no entry sign. It's not doing its job in terms of
keeping the water
out, stopping people going in. But of course, it is helpful to see what the river levels were. So that's Sunday at 11 o'clock. And then if you compare Monday at 11 o'clock, that's when the levels peaked.
It's amazing.
Really, absolutely incredible things there. Bridge, almost submerged. And then this was this morning. It has dropped just a tiny bit. But I just wanted to show you that because the heaviest rain was on Saturday across Yorkshire. Actually, it wasn't a great deal really through Sunday, and certainly not much on Monday and Tuesday. Just a few showers. But it just goes to show how the rivers respond at different times. So some rivers are very rapidly responding. And
River Taff, we saw that in Pontypridd. River Taff, big impact on Sunday. Already by Sunday evening, the Taff was going down.
And yet the Ouse and the Severn in particular, parts of the Severn are especially slow. So it's nothing unusual about this. It's just one of the things that the people forecasting the floods have to contemplate. Here at the Met Office, we have the Flood Forecasting Centre, where we use trained meteorologists from the Met Office, hydrologists as well, and they work in conjunction with the Environment Agency, taking the data from our supercomputer, taking the rainfall projections, giving those to the Environment Agency, and then the Environment Agency create these plots to forecast river levels based on their experience. They know how fast rivers respond and based on how much rain is falling and exactly where. This is just one of the examples of 7, and it shows the levels again through the weekend. Actually, on Saturday, again here, when the rain was falling hard, it actually dropped. But then we've seen that rise, that steady rise through Sunday and Monday, even when there's just been a few showers in the area, and reaching that black line there is the highest level ever recorded on this particular river, and a few other rivers, especially in Wales and across western parts of England, have recorded records for 100 years or so.
Very slow to come down. And this is the forecast. It's remaining elevated.
You've got 5 days worth of what's happened on the river, and you've got a forecast there. And again, that's using data from Met Office computers forecasting the rainfall, but also using the Environment Agency's knowledge of the local area and what rivers drain into what, where, and when. And this data is available if you go to the Environment Agency website. You can find out rivers in your area. Again, you can get that 5-day. What's happened, but also the next 36-hour projection. All the while, let's say the next couple of days, levels remaining above that red line, which is where property flooding is possible. And again, this is before the next area of rain that comes in through Wednesday.
Let's take a quick look at the forecast Wednesday, Thursday, because more rain on the way. Like we say, not on the levels of the weekend's rainfall, but nevertheless, we don't want any more rainfall. And if I just rewind it there to Wednesday, we've got a new type of graphic here.
Is it going to work?
Ooh, here we go.
Beautiful.
So essentially, this shows rainfall accumulations through the 24-hour period of Wednesday, and the key is on the left here. Rain accumulations as a function of colours, but also bars. So you can see how the bars stick out of the ground there.
So it's highlighting again that we're going to get more rain over the hills and mountains of Wales and northwest England. And those yellow colours there, those orange colours, 60 to 80 millimetres of rain, possibly more than that in 1 or 2 places.
Yeah, North Wales there, northwest England. And really it's northern England because of the rainfall coming through Wednesday. And if we fast forward it there to Thursday as well, you can see again North Wales, northern parts of England, some not as much as Wednesday, but still more rain to come on top of those sensitive areas. And yeah, rain warnings are, there we go, rain warnings are currently in force for those areas because of that additional rainfall coming in on top of saturated ground. 7
severe flood warnings in force, around 150 flood warnings in force. The severe ones mean there's a danger to life, so make sure you keep up to date with the latest from the Environment Agency. They're estimating they've helped to secure 25,000 properties have been saved from flooding because of the Environment Agency's work over recent days. Of course, it doesn't help the areas that were flooded, but as we've talked about, it was just incredible amounts of rainfall. They're working around the clock, 1,000 EA staff out and about at the moment, helping to again clear drains from the areas that have been flooded and help to lessen the impacts. But there is more rain to come.
Yeah, so stay up to date with all the Met Office advice, warnings and forecasts, and the information from the Environment Agency, Natural Resources Wales as well.
Right, let's see if there's any more questions coming in. Again, as I said, do keep your questions coming in, even if you're not watching this live. Oh, here's a good question from A. Brooks on YouTube. Any news on how long the new supercomputer will take to come online? Well, the projections are not until 2022. So the announcement this week, which we'll talk more in just a moment, we've started the process. The current supercomputer will keep running for another year or so, but yeah, by 2022, then that new supercomputer should come online. Good question.
Mark Rees, Facebook, please can you mention the poor people of Pontypridd, South Wales, as they have lost everything? Yeah, as we covered earlier, we saw those terrible scenes in Pontypridd, River Taff burst its banks and devastating flooding, so our hearts go out to everyone who's been affected. James Garrett, YouTube, how long does it take and what do you have to do to become a meteorologist? Different routes, aren't there? We did different things.
We did. Oh, well, yeah. What's the best? I always tell people to study the sciences, basically, maths, physics, computer science as well, rather than geography. A lot of people always think it's geography and they need to really study geography hard, but I always say more about the sciences, maths, physics, and computer science as well.
And I don't know what the exact entry requirements are at the moment, but certainly some kind of sciencey type of degree. Keen interest in the weather, good communication skills.
That's key, actually. Yeah, the good communication skills. That's a really important thing that's changed a lot over recent years to become a meteorologist at the Met Office.
We say.
Not too good, though.
We were recruited before that requirement came.
Obviously, yeah. But yes, keep studying the maths and the physics is what I would say, and look for opportunities within the Met Office. But there are other opportunities. Everyone's always interested in the weather. It's not going away, especially with the climate issues also. Yeah.
And finally, Natalie M, YouTube. Any temperature contrast in the US that may lead to a change in the jet stream? Well, it's been the temperature contrast in the US that has led to that particularly vigorous jet stream recently. And we've seen a repeating cycle of big temperature contrast in the US, powerful jet stream, and then deep lows being developed across the Atlantic and being sent our way. And we've seen that recurring pattern during the last few weeks. And we'll have more in terms of what the weather further ahead will have in store. But before we get there, some exciting news this week.
Yeah, very exciting news about from the Met Office. Announced on Monday, yesterday, that we're going to get a new supercomputer, an upgrade on this.
Yeah, it's not that.
This was our first ever supercomputer, the Meteor. I thought initially it was just this bit in the middle, but I think after discussion...
That's just the printer.
That's just the printer that prints out the results. Actually, this is all it. These whole cabinets and valves and all sorts going on behind there. I had a stat about how many calculations it did per second, which was...
Doesn't look that different, actually. We've still got the supercomputer in a kind of series of filing cabinet looking boxes.
It does look similar in some ways to its structure. 30,000 calculations per second this did, which is pretty impressive for 1959, I would have said.
Yeah.
But slightly less than the current supercomputer that we have.
So that's 13,000. The current supercomputer does 14,000 trillion calculations every second.
So you think of every man, woman and child on the planet, what's that, 7 billion?
More than 2
times
million.
That by 2 and then times that by 1 million is how many calculations the current supercomputer does per second.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
mind-boggling, isn't it?
That's crazy. But yes, the announcement wasn't that we bought a new supercomputer. It was just that we'd secured funding. It goes a big vote of confidence from the Met Office, from the government, to start on this project to get a new supercomputer. And it's not just one as well. It's a lot of money, but it will count over 10 years. And it's not just for the supercomputer, it's for 2 generations of supercomputer. And it's for all the paraphernalia that goes with it as well. So everything that goes around it. So all the servicing and all that kind of stuff as well. So, and the running costs of it are included in that 1.2 billion headline figure. But it's a very exciting time, and I had a chat with our chief executive, Penny Endersby, and so we can hear from her now. As Brits, we love the weather, but how will this supercomputer improve weather forecasting?
With this supercomputer, we will be able to offer more accurate predictions, but also further in advance, more localised, more tailored to some of our specialist users. And some of the things it will really help us with is the weather we find most difficult to forecast at the moment. And that tends to be local phenomena like fog and like thundery downpours. And those are nevertheless very high impact, and by knowing about them in advance, people can take measures to protect themselves and their property. On our current supercomputer, we run a 300-metre grid only over London, and that's largely for the benefit of aviation for Heathrow and Gatwick. But with this new machine, we'll be able to have portable city-scale grids that we can put over other cities in the UK, and also globally if we need to, perhaps where there's been a weather catastrophe or in support of our UK defence users.
Fascinating stuff there from Penny Endersby. It's not just about weather forecasting as well, be able to make even more accurate climate change forecasts as well. So it's a really big project. It's going to take a while, as I said, probably not online until 2022, but it will then be in place for at least a decade.
Important point is how much money that it's an investment, isn't it? How much money that it saves the economy. You think of, it's not just your weather on your app, it's so many aspects of the economy are affected by the weather, and so many industry, parts of business need accurate forecasts in order to save money, and
return on investment is estimated to be 11 to 1. So for every pound that it costs, it should return £11 worth of investment over its lifetime.
Yeah. Great, very exciting. Have a couple of questions actually. Someone, Lawrence James, here we go, Facebook. I worked on what was the first supercomputer in the Met Office at Bracknell in the 1980s, the CDC Cyber 205.
Oh, great times, he says. Oh, Lawrence, that must have been really cool. The CDC Cyber 205. Wow. Sam Young on YouTube, why was there a red weather warning? If this was the US, there wouldn't have been a warning. Sam, did you see the pictures coming out of South Wales? The houses have been flooding, it's been devastating there. I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there, but I think it was truly justified for there to be a red warning in force. Is the odd tornado possible in the band of organised showers today if some wind shear is present? Zach M on YouTube. That's a really interesting question. Certainly one to watch. It's the kind of setup that you do get very violent thunderstorms on that could possibly produce tornadoes. We don't forecast tornadoes here at the Met Office.
There was one last week. There was a similar little squall line that went through overnight last week.
Woke me up.
A lot of people were woken up. I wasn't woken up. I'm well accustomed to sleeping through noisy things, having a newborn in our house. So I was one of the few people who wasn't woken up. There was thunder, there was hail, and in some places there were suggestions of a tornado, but I don't think anything was officially confirmed or spotted.
One to watch. Keep a very close eye on it, Zach M. Right, are we looking further ahead?
Yeah, let's look further ahead because, well, as I mentioned a short while ago, the weather is staying
unsettled. I do not like that word very much, but it does kind of sum up the weather at the moment. More areas of low pressure. We do still have an active jet stream, and so we are expecting the weather to remain changeable for the rest of this week. Further rain to come. As we've said, nothing as extreme, as impactful, perhaps as what we've seen, but any extra rainfall is far from welcome, and we are going to see more rainfall into the weekend. What are we looking at here?
Put the jet stream on there with the colours indicating the strength of the jet stream coming out of North America, but also the temperature contrast. We've got another Arctic plunge across North America, bumping into much milder air further south. And I think I mentioned earlier that the jet stream is at a certain wavelength at the moment, which means that it's on a 7-day repeating cycle. So we're seeing similar weather patterns on similar days of the week. And what that means is that over the last few weeks, heading into the weekend, we've had this powerful jet stream coming out of North America, and we're seeing that again heading into this weekend. And of course, when that happens, conditions are ripe for more areas of low pressure to deepen and come our way. But as we mentioned, there were differences between Kira and Dennis. Kira was more about the winds, Dennis was more about the rainfall. And again, there are differences when you compare this coming weekend's low pressure with what we've seen during the last 2 weekends. There's a lot more uncertainty actually heading into this weekend for certain aspects of the forecast compared to the last couple of weekends, which we were fairly confident about 4 or 5 days ahead. This is how it's looking later Friday. So you can see that powerful jet stream deepening an area of low pressure close to Iceland. That low will then sit there through the weekend. And we're looking at, as Alex mentioned, very strong winds across northern parts of the UK through Friday. And then all areas seeing strengthening wind through Saturday. And for Saturday itself, this weather front close to southern counties of Britain, bringing outbreaks of rain. We don't want any more rain, but it doesn't look like a repeat of last weekend's rainfall. Further north, we're in the cold side of the jet stream, so wintry showers, that strong wind, gales around coasts, and some very blustery conditions. It's a bit more uncertain, isn't it, going to Sunday?
Yeah, there's a little ripple on the weather front, another potentially deepening area of low pressure. It doesn't look much at this stage, but again, this is only just one model and there's a lot to happen. This is a number of days ahead. As Aidan was saying, there is more uncertainty about how this develops. Quite a bit of uncertainty, actually, whether it spins up into an actual area of low pressure, whether it remains relatively flat. Either way, we are expecting it to bring more moisture and therefore more rain. So it is an area we need to keep a very close eye for, again, potential for further flooding. But there is that threat that it could spin up because of the active jet stream and develop into quite a deep area of low pressure. So it is something we'll keep a close eye on. As we talked about yesterday, actually, with Dan Harris, Deputy Chief Meteorologist, he was saying that all the conditions are very similar. So all the things are set up similar to the past 2 weekends, but at the moment it doesn't look as if it's going to develop quite like the last couple of weekends. So at the moment, it's a watching brief. I say we named the storms, named Storm Dennis on the Tuesday, we named Storm Kira on the Wednesday. This one at this stage not being named. It's too much uncertainty, and at the moment it doesn't look like it's going to be a massive wind event, but of course more rainfall to come isn't good news. So either way, there's likely to be some problems with the rainfall falling onto what is saturated ground.
And the winds stay strong through the weekend as well, and potential for colder air in the north with that rain across southern and central areas. There's also snow to look out for, to keep monitoring through the next few days, to look at the forecasts evolving, and it's northern parts of the UK, of the higher ground especially, where...
As it has been, because it's a repeating pattern. So again, it's the hills and mountains of western Scotland. Everything is coming in from the west. There is no hints, no signs of anything coming in from the east, which is, of course, when we are more likely to get more widespread snow over a larger chunk of the UK in areas that don't normally see it. But there is no sign of that. It's all coming in from the west, as it is for pretty much the rest of... I mean, you'll have more in the 10-day trend tomorrow, won't you? But for well into next week, it's all very, what we call mobile and westerly, which brings relatively mild air from the Atlantic, so no sign of any widespread snow at this stage.
No, so always important, of course, to stay up to date with us here at the Met Office. We'll have the very latest forecasts and warnings. If there are any named storms, we'll be the first to let you know. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your questions.
And keep in touch with the Environment Agency and
Natural Resources
Wales. Yes, and also I want to flag, actually, also we're keep your eyes peeled on our social media for calls in for a photograph for our app, which we may be doing later this week, because we changed the picture on our app every season, and of course the 1st of March will be the 1st of spring meteorologically, so we need a new photograph for that. So if you've got any good pics, make sure you're following us on Twitter and Facebook, and there'll be something going out about that later this week. But for now,
great.
Thank you very much for watching. See you next week.
Bye-bye.